Hello and welcome to the CTO Perspective, where we discuss unique perspectives about the most current issues in IT operations. And here today with us is Elik Eizenberg, CTO and co-founder at BigPanda. Hey, Elik.
Hi, Aaron. Good to be here again.
Great to have you. Always a pleasure talking to you. Today we're going to be talking about a specific subject in hybrid cloud and the enterprise transformation, and that is the role of ITSM and ITIL in that transformation. So let's dive directly in. Would it be fair to say that ITSM and ITIL evoke strong emotions in IT ops professionals on both sides of the scale? Some live by it, some maybe hate it, but nobody's really indifferent.
Yeah, 100%. There's, I would say this ITIL and ITSM as a kind of a space of processes and tools has been probably one of the biggest and best things that ever happened to IT operations and service management in general. Started about 25 years ago and really introduced processes that allowed large companies, enterprises to run their operations in a way that's responsible, in a way that provides good quality of service and allows the business to move fairly fast. But 25 years is a lot of time, and a lot has changed since. And the people have changed, the tools have changed, and more importantly, how we run applications and infrastructure has changed. Right? We moved to the cloud. We're using we're using CI/CD pipelines. We're doing containers. All of that has changed. How we run applications, and that means that ITSM is now not necessarily the best fit for these environments in its current form. I've spoken to IT veterans who've been managing data centers for 20, 30 years, and they clearly say that ITIL is the best thing they ever learned and implemented in their stacks. And then I've spoken to younger people, 5 years in the industry, and they say ITIL is the worst thing that ever happened in the IT operations space, and they would never touch anything that even resembles ITIL methodology. So absolutely very polarizing framework right now.
Yeah, and somewhat confusing, I would say. So there's different stories out there of successes or failures of using ITIL and ITSM. You told me a story about an online retailer who had this really good ITSM foundation for their stores, and then things started to go awry when they wanted to offer digital services and online services.
Yeah, I think it's a great example of how ITIL has been so successful for many companies, but now they're running a little bit into a wall with this ITIL methodology. So this is one of the biggest retailers in all of the US, and they have been using kind of an ITSM toolset and an ITIL methodology for their in-store infrastructure, right? So in their stores, they have point of sale system, AC systems, electricity, logistics, all of that. And they have a CMDB, change management, problem management, incident management, the entire suite of ITIL processes to manage their in-store infrastructure. And this has been very successful for them. It's a fairly slow-moving environment, very monolithic, works really well. But now recently they've started migrating, in the last 5 years or so, they started migrating to the cloud to run their digital footprint as well, right? They have mobile apps, they have an e-commerce activity, and all that is implemented in a cloud native fashion using continuous delivery methodology. And I was speaking to the head of IT operations there, and they said, we were really successful with ITIL in our in-store infrastructure, so we tried to migrate that or translate that into the e-commerce activity, into the online digital footprint that they have, and just failed miserably. And they told me, hey, we're giving up. We need an entirely new methodology to be able to bring order to the chaos of kind of the modern infrastructure.
So they're probably not proponents of ITIL and ITSM. But what about the other example on the other side of the scale that you told me about, a big financial software developer?
Yeah, this one is a very interesting story, right? This is a kind of a Silicon Valley company, very successful, doing kind of a SaaS finance product. And obviously their staff is mostly younger people, more like 5 to 10 years in the industry. And they decided one bright day, hey, we're going to migrate to all-in DevOps, SRE methodology. We're going to do continuous delivery for everything. Like ITIL was, like they literally had a sign on the wall said ITIL does not enter this building. And 6 months into this, I would say, experiment, they found that the actually quality of service went down and MTTR went up, and it actually was a degradation of service, a degradation in the quality of their service, and they had to roll back to more traditional ITIL processes to be able to maintain the complexity of their infrastructure. So it's very interesting to see how many companies that go to that extreme actually roll back to and backtrack that shift to more traditional processes.
So you told us two stories. One about a company that tried to maintain its ITIL principles while moving to the cloud. That didn't really succeed. And then another company that was trying to run away from ITIL and go to a DevOps SRE model, and that didn't succeed as well. So which one is it? It's really confusing. On the one hand, you don't want to stay behind, you want to innovate. But on the other hand, if you try to change on a dime and then run away, so to speak, from ITIL, you're likely to fail as well. So what do you do?
So, the way I think about it is this, the extremist response, which kind of you develop an allergy to anything ITIL, anything ITSM, that's not the right way to go. But there is a lot of merit to the one saying that ITIL has to be adapted to fit the times. So the solution is really around taking the same really good principles of ITIL around the different types of processes and principles that ITIL brings to the table, but changing the how you implement them to fit the modern way infrastructure is being operated and implemented.
Okay, so it's not that ITSM and ITIL are dead or alive, so to speak, but they're sort of being reborn. So what would you say, for example, if we look at the CMDB, which is always something for conversation, CMDB and ITSM, what does that represent, and how do we do that in this new world?
Yeah, so CMDB, one of the most important aspects of the ITIL methodology, right? It's a database of all your assets and all the dependencies between your assets, and that really helps you drive things like impact analysis, right? Whenever something happens, you want to understand what business service is being affected. So the idea of CMDB is definitely the right one, and every company, whether modern or traditional, has to have a CMDB. Challenge with the traditional way of doing things is that it relies on manual human entry. So human beings are actually populating the database, or sometimes it's driven by kind of auto discovery jobs that run once a week or once a month. But in a modern environment that's cloud driven or container driven, it changes by the minute, sometimes by the second, right? You have new servers coming up and going every single minute, and you have new applications being deployed every single minute. And obviously you cannot rely on human-driven processes or auto-discovery jobs. So how do you solve that? Essentially what you do, instead of relying on a single source of truth, like the traditional approach, instead of that, you actually piece together your topology view by combining different data sources. I'll give you a couple of examples. You can take change management information from tools like Chef and Ansible and Puppet, take that information as one source, right? Then you can go and actually take information from service maps by application performance monitoring tools like AppDynamics and Dynatrace. They have good service maps for application to server dependencies. You take that feed as well. Finally, another example would be, say, virtualization environments. If you have a private cloud running in your vCenter, in vSphere, you have vCenter, the management tool that can give you the dependencies between physical infrastructure and virtual machines. So you take all of these different signals, you combine them, and then you get a very good view of your topology and your service dependencies, but it's real time, it changes with your infrastructure, and doesn't rely on a single source of truth. So same whole idea of a CMDB, but implemented very differently.
So no single source of truth. And one point that was sort of hidden in what you were saying, people don't change the data. Sometimes you have to automate it. You can't rely on people to collect it manually.
Absolutely.
Okay, and taking those principles, what about change management? What does that represent in ITSM, and how do we do it differently in this new world?
Yeah, so change management has two roles, right? One role is around making sure that you introduce changes in a safe fashion that doesn't break your applications as much as possible. And the second one is providing visibility around all the changes in your organization in case something does break, so you know what has changed and might have caused your infrastructure to break. In the modern environment, obviously, we're not going to go through kind of manual ticket-based processes to approve changes. Everyone wants to use fast delivery methods like CI/CD pipelines. So what do? You essentially use CI/CD pipelines for testing to take care of the first part around not breaking things. You use the automated testing aspect for that. For visibility, that's where it becomes interesting. What you essentially do, you have to create a registry of changes that again pulls into the system different sources of changes. So you connect to your orchestration tools. Again, Ansible, Terraform, Kubernetes. You look at all the change feeds. you consume them into the central change registry. Then you look into your CI/CD tools, Jenkins, Bamboo CI, others. Take all the change feeds, you put them inside the same change registry. You look at cloud audit tools, like CloudTrail, for example. Look at all the changes in your cloud, and then you have one centralized view of all the changes. And then you use technologies like machine learning to be able to easily scan that large feed of change data to understand what changed whenever you have an incident. So again, same idea of change management, just implemented very differently for the modern infrastructure.
Okay, so just if I summarize, first of all, collect all the change feeds and do that automatically. So it's no single source of truth like in the CMDB, but a bit differently from change, and also do it automatically. And the second thing that you introduced is use machine language to correlate and understand, right?
Yeah, so exactly. Because just in the scale of modern data, you cannot rely on kind of manual sifting through information. You have to rely on machine learning to be able to identify the records that you should care about.
So basically, three main guidelines in doing ITSM in the new world, or this new combination of ITSM in the DevOps SRE model. No single source of truth. Data should not be reliant on people updating it, and use ML to correlate and analyze.
I could not have said it better.
Awesome. So maybe this would be a good place to say a few words about BigPanda, which takes all of the subjects, all the topics that we just discussed, and sort of implements them into an AIOps platform.
Yeah, absolutely. So, BigPanda is an AIOps platform that was architected from day one to be to support hybrid infrastructure. So you have your traditional infrastructure, you have your modern infrastructure, and BigPanda essentially consumes change, topology, and alert data from across both types of infrastructure, and then essentially enables the workflows we just discussed across these two types of environments.
Okay, I think we'll let the viewers try that on their own. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Really enjoyed this, and thank you, Yolam.
And if you want to hear more CTO perspectives or learn about the BigPanda platform, please visit bigpanda.io. Thanks for watching.